Our next speaker is Dr. Amir Hamidi. He'll be joining us via Zoom, and he'll be speaking about Iran's role in global terrorism. Mr. Hamidi is an internationally recognized expert in national security and global terrorism, highly decorated over the course of his 36 years of distinguished service. He consistently represented the U.S. Department of Justice and supported the prosecution of a broad range of both domestic and international crimes. Dr. Hamidi is also considered an expert on Middle East affairs. He devotes his time and expertise to raising awareness about the brutality and human rights violations committed by the Islamic Republic. Thank you, Dr. Hamidi, for your service, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, the National Press Club. Thank you, Ms. Kesrai. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored and humbled to address the members of the media, speakers, and the guests. On behalf of millions of Iranians, I would like to relay their voices and their dire circumstances. Islamic Republic of Iran continues to be one of the most brutal and oppressive regimes in the world, and the leading implementers of the death penalty. Iran is also the leading state-sponsored terrorism, as Honorable Kian beautifully addressed. Since the inception, the Islamic Republic of Iran has shown their tendencies 9 months into the regime. They stormed the American embassy in Tehran, held 52 hostages for 444 days. Since then, this regime wants to export Islam globally. They started their terror machine with the security intelligence forces, creating the Sepah Quds or Quds forces and IRGC. They bombed both the American and French military base in Beirut and Khobar Tower in Saudi Arabia, and also caused explosion in Argentina, Thailand, India. They also conspired to assassinate the Saudi ambassador in the United States. The IRGC controls the customs and all ports, both by land, sea, and by air, to conduct drug trafficking, smuggling, and money laundering globally. The IRGC has implemented costly enrichment project and the production of missile weapons for nuclear use and military intervention in the Middle East. They also deliver modern weapons and large financial and logistical donations to the terrorist organizations such as Hezbollah, Hamas, and Islamic Jihad. Militant groups such as the Popular Mobilization in Iraq, the Kata'ib Party in Iraq, the Al-Ashtar Brigades in Bahrain, the Taliban in Afghanistan, the Houthis in Yemen, and terrorist groups in Africa, South America, and finally, protection of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. It has left Iran deprived of its wealth and poverty. Unemployment, hunger, homelessness, prostitution, addiction, suicide, and organ trafficking are prevalent among the Iranian people. Iran had executed at least tens of thousands of people since 1980 on a vaguely defined national security crimes of enmity against God, growing corruption on earth, and armed rebellion, and hundreds of people on espionage charges. Iran courts fall short of providing fair trials and use confession obtained under torture and evidence in a court. Authorities have failed to meaningfully investigate numerous allegations of torture against detainees. Authorities routinely restrict detainees' access to legal counsel. particularly during the initial investigation period. The IRGC intelligence organizations continues to arrest Iranian dual and foreign national on vague charges as cooperating with a hostile state. Iran continues to repress their own people. Iran has not stopped or confronted these serious rights violations, while Khamenei continues to greenlight this rampant abuse. The longtime prosecutor and present Chief Justice of Iran, Ebrahim Raisi, is selected by Khamenei as Iran's rigged president. As we all know, the Raisi has been accused of a variety of well-documented crimes against humanity. The climax of this bloody decade occurred in 1988, when several thousand political prisoners were slaughtered and subjected to a collective purge. The bloodbath was orchestrated and implemented by a 4-person committee known as Death Squad by Iranians, appointed by the first leader of Iran, Khomeini. The Death Squad was mandated to exterminate all political prisoners who had previously been subject to unfair legal proceedings and were serving their prison sentences. Despite of serving their sentences, the prisoners were merely asked whether they still held their political opinions for which they had previously been charged and tried. If they answered affirmatively, they were executed on an extrajudicial basis. Based on extensive evidence, President-elect Raisi, who was a member of the 4-person committee on the Death Squad, has openly admitted his role in such extrajudicial proceedings without ever showing any remorse for having assumed an indispensable role in the regime's crime against humanity. Iranian citizens have rightfully boycotted the Islamic Republic elections in Iran because they are corrupt, fraudulent, and rigged. This oppressive and evil regime wants to retain control and do so through illegitimate means. Given Raisi's display of impunity, a majority of Iranians wants Raisi prosecuted by an international criminal court instead of fraudulently declared the victor in Iran's presidential election. The judiciary and intelligence agencies continue to use several overly broad articles of penal code, such as propaganda against the state, assembly and collusion to act against national security, insulting the supreme leader, this is so funny, and establishing of membership in group to disrupt national security to prosecute activists and human rights defenders. Authorities have prosecuted at least 200 people who participated in protests against the IRGC downing of the Ukrainian airliner on January 8, and government's initial false denial of responsibility. Judiciary Chief and President-elect Raisi described himself as a defender of human rights, but his involvement in the 1988 mass execution of several thousand political prisoners, but as we all know, he is a mass murderer. This is like putting a bank robber as a bank manager. Before even he gets sworn in his office, Raisi said, the United States must lift all oppressive sanctions against Iran. When asked about Iran's ballistic missile program, and its support of regional militias, Raisi described the issues as non-negotiable. Raisi, a follower of Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, has been sanctioned by the United States over his involvement in the mass execution. As such, Iranian demands the international community heed to concerns of Iranian citizens and consider the most appropriate means to hold Raisi to account for his heinous crimes. The United Nations and all leaders of powerful and civilized nations should condemn the current Iranian regime and prosecute him for being leading state sponsor of terrorism, human rights violation, and crimes against humanity. I thank you allowing me to speak for you here, and because I believe it is an honor to address these very critical issues facing Iranian citizens today. Thank you.